Episode 8 of Apothecary Diaries, fantastic episode. Really like that punchline at the end. I like how they kind of rounded everything back for one last jab at poor Jinchi. There's a side of me that's starting to feel bad for the guy, but at the same time, he's creepy, and I've never really liked him that much, and he's kind of creepy, so it works out in the end. But yeah, a very interesting episode, because on one end, there is a case to be solved in this episode, and there's something to be said about how interesting it is to have a case not necessarily fully solved, like it being left as is. Now, I think because nobody in the end loses their life, I think that kind of softens it a bit, but it is kind of interesting to have a case where Mao Mao doesn't fully solve it. Somebody isn't put to trial. Somebody isn't in trouble for the whole situation. It's all kind of covered up, and people kind of just move on their ways. But the nugget, obviously, for me, personally, for this episode, is really around seeing how Mao Mao has learned what she has learned. All evidence so far has kind of portrayed this idea that Mao Mao is just smart, and that she's put a lot of things into practice herself. But in this episode, we're finally seeing that, yes, her father has kind of instilled upon her all this kind of knowledge, and has always been testing her, which I thought was really fantastic. Kind of opening up with, yes, having this case where this girl just shows up and drags Mao Mao. Like, she just woke up. It's her day off. She gets 3 days off. This girl can't take a break, and she ends up getting dragged off to a murder mystery. Granted, yes, nobody technically died, but it was, in the end, attempted. But yeah, being dragged off to this place, and yeah, immediately finding a guy that's not breathing. This lady's breathing very heavily, and yes, trying to resuscitate them, and coming to find out what exactly happened. Now, it's interesting because, yes, she initially arrives. She's a little bit shocked. She's still waking up, apparently. She even notes later on, I made a mistake because I'm probably still trying to wake up. But she immediately goes into action. Really like seeing that side of her where she's obviously flustered. What am I doing here? This is a brothel that I don't normally go to. I'm being dragged here. Okay, what's here? And then immediately turning into work mode. All right, this is what we're doing. Do this, do this, do this. Handing out tasks to everybody and just solving the problem right then and there. Not asking questions, not saying why am I here, what's going on here. No, immediately turn into work mode. Get the job done. But yeah, this is kind of an interesting different side of Mao Mao because she herself isn't solving it. She immediately tells the girl, go get my dad. This is what he handles. Now, when she's in the rear palace, yes, she's being sought at by other people, and especially Jinchi. Whereas here, at the brothels, she enlists her father's help. He's the one that... and again, this kind of shows us where Mao Mao has learned everything. This seems to be the kind of normal shtick, is that normally they get her father, bring him there, and he would handle an issue. But in this case, they just grabbed her. As we find out, that was intentional. She didn't want... the little girl did not want to get the father. She brings Mao Mao in there, and Mao Mao immediately says, okay, I'm going to solve this issue, but while I'm doing this, go get my father. He's the one that does it. So again, it kind of implies how they normally work out, which is the father's figuring it out. She even kind of props him up quite a bit here, saying that my dad is able to deduce 2 to 3 things from a single piece of information. She's propping him up as he's smarter than me. This is the guy that gets stuff done. And so yes, when he comes in there, he starts to figure things out, and then he immediately turns to her and say, okay, what happened? He doesn't say, okay, this is what happens. He wants to test her. She even says it like, oh, here it is. Here it is. It's time. It's time for me to do what I normally do, which is where he asks me what the problem is, and I try to figure it out. And yes, she unfortunately makes a mistake in the idea that she goes, okay, it's the tobacco. The tobacco did it. And yeah, I didn't give him water because that would dilute it inside their stomach and it would make it worse. But then he kind of points out, no, it was already diluted. And they're kind of pointing out different evidence early on, which honestly, one of them didn't really make too much sense to me, but I'm not big on drinks, so I don't know how this whole thing works. But yes, eventually kind of pointing out that yes, the straws that she found, the tobacco she found, it all kind of correlates to one thing. This courtesan essentially made a 2-layer drink and put the poison in the upper layer so that she can use a straw to get around it. In the end, she does poison herself in order to cover it up as a double suicide, but that's the whole intention there, was in order to trick the man into thinking that she was drinking the same drink. But again, going back, I like this. I like seeing what makes Mao Mao tick. How she is as smart as she is. And again, I kind of accepted early on this idea that this girl is just always studying poisons. She's always working on herbs and stuff like that. She's an apothecary through and through. And that knowledge that she has of different things is what she applies to different cases. And yes, technically adding in all of her experiences being around the different courtesans and the different brothels. She applies all of her knowledge that she's accumulated being around other people into solving issues that normally people aren't kind of subject to on a daily basis. She's seen it so much. Just like the face powder. I've seen it. I've seen what it does to people, and thus I know how it's going to affect these people. But no, what's kind of interesting is kind of following this whole thing up. There's also the other side of it that her father seems to be instilling upon her not applying conjecture. And I think that's been something that I've kind of pointed out several times throughout the series so far, is that Mao Mao does have a habit of applying conjecture. She says, I see this. It's not technically evidence. If you went to a court system, a normal court system, you wouldn't probably be able to prosecute somebody with this information because it's not 100% evidence. It doesn't tie itself directly to somebody. It's just like the whole situation with the girl that was essentially taken in by that great general. She said, yeah, I think she was faking it to stay pure from the emperor until the day that she can go off with him. But I don't know that for sure, so please keep it between us. I don't know for 100%. Same with the whole situation with the fish and Li Shu. She has an idea, but she has no evidence. And it seems like, based on this episode, this is something that her father is constantly trying to drill in her head. Don't go based off conjecture. You need to have evidence, basically. And so in the end, when it all kind of wraps up, and yeah, Mao Mao's going, everything's leading up to this being murder, like attempted murder right here, that she went out of her way to do that. Everybody hated this guy. And so it was probably attempted murder. But in the end, they had no evidence. And they were technically paid hush money. I kind of wonder if the father knew that. When the lady of the brothel handed over the money, and the father said, no, that's okay. Mao Mao said, you need to pay rent. Take that. And the lady kind of did a little, ugh. I wonder if the father knew that that money was hush money, and he didn't want it. It is one of those things where the father looks really old, and he looks kind of run down, and he looks like he's not all there. But this guy's smart. Yes, he's old. Yes, he's injured. Yes, he's slow. But this guy knows what he's doing. This guy's smart. And I think he knows full well. He's been around the block. He's been around the brothel block a few thousand times, that he knows that that's hush money. But he accepted it because she told her to. And she even confirms it later. Yeah, this is a lot of money. This is hush money. But in the end, Mao Mao can't let it go. Unlike him, she can't let it go. She keeps thinking it through and trying to figure out what actually happened. In the end, he finally tells her, look, it's done. Let it go. And she even says the same thing when she goes to the brothel later in order to get washed up. She said, if you keep thinking about all these details in this place, like in this world, if you keep thinking about those details, you're going to go crazy, basically. You can't survive constantly thinking about all this stuff. So it kind of gives credit to what the father says. She understands that. It's just, it's funny because for so many times throughout the episode, she constantly keeps saying that. She keeps saying that, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't have proof. You can't keep thinking about the details, but she keeps doing it because that's Mao Mao. I think Mao Mao just feeds off that. We've kind of established that over time, and I think it was like the first real introduction to Gyokyo that happened. Like the narrator literally says that this girl loves this stuff. She eats it up, and she has a smidge of sense of justice. She wants to have some sort of justice in the end. But yeah, great little kind of insight into essentially what her father has instilled upon her, what she's sort of passed on to him, and how that sort of dictates her life. Because so many times you can kind of see what makes a person based on their upbringing and who they've been kind of studying under for so long. The other kind of conundrum this episode kind of produces is that question mark of, well, it's okay because of this. Like it's presenting that whole issue with, well, is it really murder when the person that was killed is a horrible person? Like, this is a person that everybody wants dead. This is a horrible person that mistreats people and destroys life. So he's just getting his comeuppance. It is that conundrum that it's creating, because that's essentially what they do. When she first knows that crazy girl trying to stab that dude and she stops it, the courtesan's like, yeah, we got to talk. And that was the moment where I'm like, yeah, this is inside job. Everybody knows what's going on. The moment that courtesan's like, hey, yeah, can we talk for a minute, Mao Mao? Let me explain why she's crazy. Where she comes into this other room and she explains the whole situation. This is a merchant, a son of a rich merchant. And that rich merchant pretty much lets his son do everything, pays for guards, and just spoils him. And this guy is going around and essentially whispering sweet nothings in all of these courtesans' ears, saying that he's going to buy them, take them out of the brothel, and live with them. And then at the last minute, just like the sister of that girl, no, he canceled it right at the last minute. toying with her heart. Like he gets a kick out of it. They're implying that he gets a kick out of that. Like he gets bored of them and just kind of moves on. And because of that, this happened. The one that was doing this double ending, I know, I'm sorry, YouTube as usual. This double ending, she was actually also into the guy. She was swooned by him. And she was trying to end it that way. But of course, yes, later on, Mao Mao figures it out that, yeah, this was straight up, her trying to end him. But it kind of presents that question mark of, can you overlook this? She says, do you want me to overlook this then? Yeah, that's what they're basically saying. Because he's a horrible person, he had it due to him. And, in the end, technically nobody dies, but he almost died. But would Mao Mao go out of his way to preach on the side of the road going, they tried to kill this horrible person? It's like, who wins in the end? It is kind of presenting that whole question mark. Now, granted, I think Mao Mao would have gone through it. If Mao Mao figured out actual evidence, I think she would have done it. Because she's already presenting this idea that she's not too happy with that place. Like, they all work together. The lady was paying the hush money. The little girl was madly wanting him done. She was very conniving. And even the lady that did the whole drinking process was very conniving. They're all clever people taking down a clever person. Everybody's at each other's throats right there. But she doesn't have evidence. But I think if she had evidence, I think she would have done it. Because again, that's how Mao Mao thinks. I want to put in this last piece of puzzle and complete the cycle. Not that she thinks the merchant is deserving of living. I don't think that's really the case. But that's the whole idea here of creating that conundrum, creating that conflict with, do you seek justice in a case of a horrible person being wronged? I love gray area stories like that. I just eat it up. I love being conflicted. I love being conflicted with the end result. Because yes, in the end, that brothel would have been done for if she had evidence to work against them. And there would be that nasty feeling of that merchant boy is getting his revenge. The other cool thing this story kind of presents is the conundrum of, what is a courtesan? What are these ladies? What is their jobs? Their jobs are to whisper sweet nothings into men's ears. Their job, we present that at the very end when she finally goes to leave with Lihaku. She literally is like, they're going to squeeze this man dry. They've got him by the other things. They know how to take everything he has. That's what they do. So it's like that question mark of like, so is it any different when the men themselves do the same thing? It is like that idea of, yes, technically the men going into these brothels should understand that this is a job for these ladies, that their job is to please them and to get money out of you for doing that. But is it so bad the men do the same in reverse? Offer love and offer another place and offer to leave that job only to break it off. I think, yes, the men doing that is more harsh because the men going into the brothel should understand that it's an entertainment. Whereas the reverse is the men telling the women that it's not entertainment, that it means something to them, and they want to please them for the rest of their lives. They want to take them out of this service, which a lot of people probably would not enjoy. Yes, they all seek to be the three princesses and be the best of the brothel, but most of them fail. And they're trying to give them an opportunity to get out of that. Not have to use your body for the rest of your life to make a living, but rather, be with me for the rest of your life. So I do think there is a side of it that is more worse than the men doing that to them, but there is a kind of equalizing there. But that, yes, they're both whispering sweet nothings in each other's ears. So that's kind of the biggest question mark. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below if that is something you see as equal, or do you see one side being worse? Because from the side of the brothel itself, the ladies, the friend and the little girl, they're all trying to paint it as this guy is the worst, even though that's technically what they always do. But yeah, the episode kind of wraps up with Mao Mao going back. And immediately Jinshi's giving her the death stare. She's like, I want to leave. I want to get out of here. I'm going to go change. I'm going to wait for you in the parlor. And then, yes, he's like, so I heard you had some time off. Did you go home? Yeah, everybody's doing well. Yeah, why didn't you contact me? Why did you contact Lihaku? And again, it's going back in that whole discussion of like, what do the hairpins mean? And he's like, you took one from him. Yeah, I thought it was a consolation prize. So I lost to a consolation prize. You went to a consolation prize over me. Why? He was so bitter. He was so bitter. But again, yes, it kind of goes back to that whole thing of like, yeah, the joke in the end is her saying, but I didn't have any sort of payment to you. I figured out a payment to him. Yes, I give him a great night and I worked so hard on it, and I feel so good about it. I think I did a great job with him and making him the happiest person ever. And of course, Jinchi just thinks that it's, yes, Mao Mao betting him. But yes, we all know that it's Mao Mao getting him to be betted. But yeah, Jinchi doesn't know that. Hopefully Goshun explains things to him, but man, Gyokyo went outside and she is just losing it. Like, she just loves this whole thing. I think the greatest thing about Mama and Jinchi's relationship is just seeing Gyokyo on the side, just having a ball with this whole thing. She just loves watching this unfold. She loves seeing the face on Jinchi and how he's suffering this entire time. Hopefully she explained things, or at least, again, Goshun. But that was great. That was absolutely hilarious. Good stuff. It was, yes, obvious, but it was cute to see from Mei Mei, at least, at the brothel that, yes, the old lady was upset that Mao Mao had disappeared. We all knew that. We knew that she was an old teddy bear. Even though Mao Mao thinks that it costed so much to have Lihaku have those nights there, that she's probably has a new buyer the moment she leaves the rear palace. Like, the moment I leave there, I'm going to be in servitude to her because, yeah, that probably costed a lot for them to keep Lihaku. Presumably keep Lihaku there for 3 days. I don't know that he leaves to go somewhere else at some point, or he just stayed there the entire 3 days. It was also really interesting having that little brief moment where Mao Mao was walking through the Pleasure District as kind of like our first kind of glimpse of her going, ah, yeah, this is the place I've always kind of been. This is the place I've always had to do dealings with. But her kind of specifically equating the two places, the rear palace and the Pleasure District. And the idea that both of these places are kind of a garden and a cage. They're a place that so many things equally kind of happen between the two of them. Yes, it's cutthroat. People are kind of losing their lives. People are used and discarded. Both these things are kind of happening similarly in both places. The initial impressions when the series first starts is the idea that Mao Mao gets kidnapped and then sold off this place, and she's kind of locked down there. And this place is kind of dangerous and she can't go home. But it's kind of equating the two of them as not being so different. Anyways, fantastic episode. Like I said, getting to see how Mao Mao, what makes her tick, how her father has guided her to being as pretty much as smart as she is. And yes, like I said, all those gray areas that I eat up. I love gray area stuff. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what's the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button to get my content. I do news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate everybody does. Y'all take care.